Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is open up Deducer. And so I go and click on the Jaguar icon. It's this JGR right here. And when the program opens, it's going to have these two windows. First, it's going to have the console window, which is right here. And this is where all the code from the work that you're doing is produced. And you can see that it's been loading some packages, doing some code things, and now it's finished. And then there's also this data viewer window, and that's where you can look at your data, sort of in a spreadsheet-like format. So to show you what I mean, I'm just going to start by opening some data up, and I have this browser so I can find where my data is, and I click open. This is a CSV file, so I get a little dialog box that's telling me that it's a CSV file, and it's letting me look to see if everything looks the way that I want it to look when the data comes in. And I can see that the name of the variables is being put right in with the data, so I need to click header, and now it looks great. Now the names of the variables are up at the tops of the columns. I'll just click load. And then you can see my data. And so it shows up in this sort of spreadsheet-like format. It looks almost like it would in Excel. And you can scroll through it and see all of the entries. So here are the variable names and then all the information, and this is one entry all the way across. Okay, so on the data viewer window, there are a number of things that you can do. First of all, you could open more data by clicking on this button. You could save your data if you've done something to it, or you could close out the data that you have open right now. And then there's this drop down right here. I only have one data set open right now, but if you had more than one, you could click and you could scroll through the different data sets that you had open and choose which one you wanted. And then the last thing that I'd like to show you on the data viewer window is there are these two tabs. One's called data view. That's what we're looking at right now with the spreadsheet data. The other one's called variable view. And when I click on that, I see all of the variables listed out, and then I have the variable type, the way that Deducer is considering them. You can see that a lot of these are listed as factor variables, and so then they have the levels for the factor. So there are only a certain number of options, and then all of the options are listed out here. And what's great about this is if you don't think that Deducer has the right idea about your variable type, you can change it. So for example, this variable comes in as an integer, so it's only a round whole number. But if you thought that really you should be considering it as the string, so like with quotes around it, you could change it to character and it would consider it as character. And then if you decided that actually integer made more sense, you can change it right back. And what you'll notice is when I'm doing those changes, things are happening over here in the console window. So you can see first it says as character, and it changes it, and then it says as integer, and it changes it back. So anything that you do in one of the other windows will show up as code in the console window. Alright, so now that we've looked at all the options for what you can do with the data viewer window, I want to move over to the console. And that's because you can see that when I have the data viewer window selected, I only have a very few menu options up at the top here. But if I click onto the console window, I get all these different menu options. And we'll talk through what each of them means. First, there's just the program menu, which has the usual preferences and about kind of stuff. Then there's the file menu. You could also open or save your data here if you didn't want to do it with the buttons on the data viewer. There's edit in case you wanted to copy or paste something. There's this workspace menu, which lets you save the workspace. And so that's any code that you've entered into the console window or that's been entered for you. That would all get saved in a file. And usually I don't recommend doing this. If you have some code, you should save it in a different kind of document. Usually the workspace save isn't the most usable format that you could save some code in. Then there's the data menu, and this has some useful things. Perhaps the most useful is subset, but there's also sorting that you could do. You can transform or recode variables and that sort of stuff. What's great is that if you wanted to sort in a more dynamic way, you could go over to the data viewer and you could just right-click on the name of the variable and you can sort right from there. So that's great. Moving on to the analysis menu, this only has a couple of things that we're going to want to use. Frequencies and descriptives, maybe contingency tables, but all this other stuff gets a little too complicated for mobile eyes. Then there's the plots menu. If you want to make a plot, you can use the plot builder, and this is where you just double click on something that you want to make, and you can choose a variable and just have it plotted for you right here. The thing to remember with the plot builder is you can make the plot, you can make all sorts of changes to it, but if you want to save the plot, you have to click this button that says Run, and then it's going to pop up again in another window, just like this. And this is where you could actually save it as a PDF or a JPEG. So that's something good to remember. Moving on from plots, then there's the spatial menu. And just as a reminder, if you want to do some spatial analysis, the first thing you have to do is convert your data frame. So you choose the data from the drop-down that you want to use. You put the latitude in the latitude box and the longitude in the longitude box. Then you click Run. And now once I've done that, then I can use the spatial plot builder. I could make some colored points. You see I have a choice. I would have a choice of data sets, but since there's only one that I've converted to a spatial data set with the SP, that's the only one I could use. And then I could just plot some points right on the map right there. And then I can zoom in and look at them. And again, I can make all sorts of changes. I could click on this and change the size of the circle if I wanted to. I can put on more labels. I could plot other points, but if I want to be able to save it, I have to click Run. And that's what makes all the code appear in the window back here. And this is all of the code that's necessary to create that map. So it's a little bit complicated, but if you looked through it, you'd probably be able to understand it. And then once it has all loaded in this window, then you could save it as any file type that you were interested in. So I'll just close that. The next menu here is the text menu. And again, you have to do a little bit of pre-processing before you can do anything with your text data. What you have to start with is extract corpus from data frame. So then you choose the data that you want to make a corpus on, and then you choose whatever variable that you want to do text analysis on. So maybe you want to make a word cloud or something. So you select which variable, you say save, it does a little bit of code, and then you're able to do any of these other text functions, like you could make a word cloud. I'll just use all the defaults. And this plots right into that window where you could save it as a PDF or a JPEG. So that's very convenient. There are just a couple more things here. There's the packages and data menu. And this is where, oops, let's close this. So the packages and data menu, this is where you could manage some packages or install new packages. And those can be useful if you need new functionality, but you hopefully will not. Then there's the window menu, which lets you toggle between windows or close windows, and the help menu, which will get you to R help or Deducer help. Hopefully that's enough to get you started. And to close out, I'm just going to quit the program so you can see how that looks. So when I quit, it asks me if I want to save workspace. That's what I was talking about before, where all of the code gets saved into a file, and as a default, I usually say no, I don't want to save, and it closes the program, and I'm all finished.